So this is a group of Ukrainian soldiers captured by Russian forces, but then the drones come in and everything changes. In just the last few days, we have seen drones rescue Ukrainian soldiers that were taken prisoner and other Russian soldiers surrendering to a Ukrainian unmanned ground vehicle. Also, we just hit 1 million subs in this channel a couple days ago, which is wild and not something I ever thought was in the cards when starting out. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. I mean, I feel like this is one of those accomplishments that's ours together. It's not mine, not by a long shot. I couldn't do this without you being here day in and day out to watch the videos and like them, of course, only if the video deserves it, adding your thoughts in the comments, sharing with friends and family. I know there's so many places that you all can go to get this information, and it means the absolute world to have your trust, your confidence, and your attention for these videos so we can continue diving into some of these subjects. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much. Again, I feel like this is our accomplishment, and it's so cool. Now, I thought a great way to celebrate this would be to kick off our biggest fundraiser yet. We're working to source an entire fleet of vehicles for a new Ukrainian drone unit, and as a part of that, put together what I think, at least, is a pretty cool looking patch. But more on that here in a second. Now, the Ukrainian 25th Airborne Brigade released this footage saying near Pokrovsk, drones saved Ukrainian soldiers from captivity. 4 soldiers were captured by a Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group during an assault on an observation post. Later, the enemy group escorting our soldiers was detected by aerial reconnaissance patrolling the area. Strike drones from the 25th Separate Airborne Brigade and adjacent units took off immediately to assist. The approach of the FPV drone swarm disoriented the enemy and distracted their attention. The Ukrainian soldiers took advantage of this and managed to break free from enemy captivity. Meanwhile, the Russian soldiers tried to hide in bushes and trenches, but within a few minutes, more than 10 Ukrainian strike drones engaged the group. As a result, the enemy personnel were destroyed and the Ukrainian soldiers were freed from their temporary captivity. Now, this kind of looks like a QRF via drones, or a quick reaction force. In most military operations, there's going to be some element set aside to respond quickly if one of your forward elements needs it. Now, it varies by the unit, it varies by the location, it varies by the conflict. But in this war, especially, in some of these areas in the East, you cannot get to the front very quickly with any sizable force, right? Like the idea of quickly moving a squad, let alone a platoon forward to try to retake that area under the constant watch of drones is just suicide. So what we're seeing here is kind of that same QRF type mission, but instead of a squad or platoon of Ukrainian soldiers, it's 10 plus Ukrainian strike drones from a number of different units that come in and isolate the Russian soldiers and take them out one by one. And we've seen countless videos at this point where when the drones start flying overhead, it's chaos. Everybody scatters. They move to different areas. They're trying to survive, trying to find any sort of cover. So 1 or 2 coming in, you can see what that would do on the ground. And in this case, it gave the Ukrainian soldiers just enough of a window to leave that area and make their way back to the Ukrainian front lines. Pretty innovative in a lot of ways. Now, we also got footage a couple days ago of an unmanned ground vehicle, or robot, taking Russian prisoners. I did see this presented as the first time this has happened in history. I don't think that's the case. A few months ago, we actually had the Ukrainian 3rd Assault Brigade driving these UGVs full of explosives into a dugout, and eventually the Russian soldiers surrendered. They surrendered to the UGV, and the ground vehicle escorted them back to Ukrainian positions where they were taken captive. So I don't know if this is the first, but we should expect to see this more and more. So in a lot of these situations, as Ukraine is clearing out Russian positions, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 Russians in, say, the basement of a building, which is what it looks like happened here. Incredibly risky to move forward and ask them to surrender and hope that they do, because if they don't, they might open fire and kill the Ukrainian soldier trying to take them prisoner. So we're going to see a lot more of these UGVs carrying out that last mile task, those last few meters is probably a better way to put it, of moving up to the door. And it's not hard to put a speaker on these things and be able to transmit a voice and commands to the UGV. And then I would expect the UGV is either met by dismounted Ukrainian soldiers, either right there at the scene or maybe a block or 2 away, to actually take those Russians into captivity. But this concept of UGVs taking prisoners on the battlefield makes a lot of sense. We should expect to see more of this in the near future. Now, shifting over to the map, we've got a couple different updates from the Russian side that I wanted to share here. We are continuing to see Russian advances, or attempted advances, in Konstantinivka here in the Kramatorsk direction, which happens to be this unit that we're supporting right now. And then also down here in the Zaporizhia direction, specifically north of Huliopoli. And this is one, there was some interesting commentary shared by Russian mill blogger Alexander Kost that I wanted to share. I believe the village that they're talking about taking is right here, just to the west in this gray area here. But he quoted a couple different soldiers from the 114th Guards Motor Rifle Regiment. Call sign Viking, one of the assault soldiers, said, quote, "We listen to the sky, move carefully and wait for the weather, fog, snow, rain." The platoon commander, Grom, said, quote, "The hardest part is getting there. It's not so difficult to clear in a firefight. We move in small groups, but everything depends on the weather, which is the most important thing for an assault soldier. One covers, the second provides cover, the third runs across, and that's how we got closer and closer to the house, throwing grenades and dropping TM-62s or anti-tank landmines into the basements." And I just thought it was interesting. We're hearing more and more from these soldiers how critical, how the most important thing on the battlefield is the weather. Now, is it like number one? Probably not, right? I still feel like there's a few things that are probably more important than weather conditions, but we are seeing the weather dictate movement on the front more in the last 6 to 12 months than we have throughout the entire war. A great example was a few months ago in Pokrovsk, where we saw Russian forces advance at a faster rate than we have seen in a long time, and it's because of, I think it was 4 or 5 days in a row of low, dense cloud cover and fog. So what that allows to happen at the front, in both directions, I should mention, is rain to a degree, fog even more so. You have thermal cameras that can see through that, but there's not very many thermal drones across the battlefield, and very few strike drones come with thermal cameras just because the cost there is prohibitive. So even if you've got a reconnaissance drone with thermal imagery, that's special, right? Not everybody has those. And you mark the location of, say, in this case, advancing Russian soldiers, then committing a strike asset to that is challenging. Very, very difficult with low visibility. And then, of course, there's very few strike assets with thermal imaging capability. So more and more, we're seeing how significant the weather is playing into any advances in either direction. And we did see a little bit of this a couple of days ago, where the Ukrainian 225th Separate Assault Regiment said that Russia used armored vehicles in an offensive for the first time so far in 2026. This is another operation in the Zaporizhia direction. They said, quote, 2 armored fighting vehicles carrying 14 troops attempted to use the fog to launch an attack. The infantry of the 225th Separate Assault Regiment engaged the enemy with support from FPV drones. The first AFV was hit by a drone at the moment the troops were dismounting, forcing the enemy infantry to shift from offensive actions to defensive. They say after an hour of fighting, both armored fighting vehicles were destroyed and the assault force was eliminated in small arms combat with the regiment's fighters, with additional support from drones and artillery. And I mean, the drones and artillery are hammering things in that. Right? It looks like the soldiers ran to a couple buildings trying to take cover and then immediately just got smashed by Ukrainian artillery and heavy bomber drones overhead. But again, it's this concept of trying to take advantage of the fog while you can. You can imagine how dangerous it would be to have fog in the launch site and move forward, and all of a sudden you drive out of it and you're facing relatively clear skies and those drones start coming in. Now, there's another Russian update here a little bit further east that I wanted to provide in the Konstantinivka direction. So this is an area that sits southwest of Chasiv Yar, a bit northeast of, we'll zoom out a little bit here, a bit northeast of Pokrovsk, and it's in this Kramatorsk-Sloviansk direction. So it's a bit of a bulge still here in the Konstantinivka direction. Rybar, Russian media, put out some pretty interesting graphics that I thought were relatively helpful. So I'm going to play those here with an update from this location. Again, this is the Russian perception in Konstantinivka. They say, in this direction, Russian troops are advancing on the city from several sides, attempting to partially encircle its garrison. In recent weeks, they have managed not only to establish a foothold in the city center, but also expanded their control zone on both banks of the Klemenbek Reservoir, which is a little bit directly south of Konstantinivka. They say south of this area, Ukraine conducted a local counterattack in the third week of January. Ukrainian formations managed to reach positions in an extensive support point in the fields, but failed to secure the village itself. Within a few days, Russian forces pushed the enemy out of positions in this area and significantly expanded their control zone. They say the situation in this direction continues to develop in favor of the Russian armed forces. The actions of Russian UAV units plays a crucial role, striking supply routes, command points, and enemy equipment. This prevents Ukraine from deploying sufficient reserves to threaten sectors and facilitates the advancement of assault groups. Now, in terms of the having a foothold in the city center, I've not seen that really supported anywhere else. This is deep state map that we're looking at here. It does generally line up with the Rybar assessment that there are Russian forces moving into the southeastern portion of the city. But in terms of a foothold in the city center, even some of the more pro-Russian maps don't have that being the case quite yet. There might be 1, 2, 3, 4 infiltrators coming through at a time that maybe are identified and eliminated, or maybe they're able to stake out for a period of time. But I think we're still a little ways away from Russia having objective control of the city center of Konstantinivka. But nonetheless, this just points again to the challenges that Ukraine faces in the east. Everywhere along this eastern front, Ukraine is under intense pressure, which actually lines up with this fundraiser that we're kicking off right now. I'm really excited to share this with you guys. I had a hard time, like we were putting this together, and I just was waiting for it all to come into place. But what we're doing is tying in with the Ukrainian 104th Territorial Brigade that is standing up a new drone company, the Seraphins, or new drone battalion, excuse me. They were a company, hyper successful, so they're moving them to a battalion. They need vehicles. This year, 2026, we're going to do a campaign with Car for Ukraine every other month to outfit that entire battalion. Now, we're starting out with, we got the campaign pulled up here. We're calling it our Winter Offensive. Starting out with a goal of 97,000 euros. That's 8 different vehicles for this unit. And we've actually got a video from the unit, the battalion commander, and some of the soldiers, I think better explaining than I could exactly why this campaign is so important. Let's give that a quick watch.
Бажаємо здоров'я, дорогий Престоне.
Вітаємо тебе, дорогий Престон.
Дорогий Престоне Стюарте.
Дорогий Престоне, ми бійці 2-го БППС 104-ї бригади ТРО.
From Ukrainian soldiers, thank you for your support, Preston Stewart.
Другий батальйон безпілотних систем. Привіт зі сходу України.
Бажаю здоров'я, дорогі Престоне. Бажаю здоров'я всім підписникам YouTube-каналу Престона Стюарта. Друзі, я командир 2-го батальйону безпілотних систем 104-ї окремої бригади «Горинь». Ми зараз на прекрасній Донецькій землі, в районі, де відбуваються одні, мені здається, найважливіших бойових дій за Краматорськ і Слов'янськ. Саме ці землі Владимир Путін вимагає віддати просто так, без боя. Це наша рідна земля. Ми б'ємося вже 4 роки, і ми не плануємо нікому нічого віддавати. Ми ефективно знищуємо противника і не даємо йому просуватися вперед. Ще вчора ми були ротою ударних безпілотних авіаційних комплексів, а також піхотним батальйоном. Сьогодні відбувається реформа Збройних сил України. Розвиваються безпілотні системи, і ми знищуємо ворога вже не так, як в 22-му році. За парадигмою 20-го століття ми воюємо дронами, ми воюємо наземними роботизованими комплексами. Ви навіть не уявляєте, як зараз змінилася картинка війни. Те, що ви бачите в голлівудських блокбастерах, вже не актуально від слова взагалі. Війна відбувається інакше. Це високотехнологічна сфера, це високотехнологічне вбивство одне одного. Але це наша земля. Україна – це країна, яка твердо стоїть на позиціях демократії. Це країна, яка твердо стоїть на позиціях свободи слова, прав людини, свободи віросповідання. Це ключові принципи, за які ми боремося, і ми не дамо жодному авторитарному режиму прийти і підкорити нас. Ми щит Європи, ми щит західної цивілізації, і ми просимо вас підтримати нас. На сьогоднішній день серед наших великих зборів збори на автомобілі. На таких пікапах ми доставляємо вантажі, ми доставляємо наші екіпажі. І це ефективний інструмент логістики. Підтримайте нас, і ви побачите, як ми працюємо. І вам це сподобається. Слава Україні! Слава американському народові!
All right, now I've worked with Car for Ukraine before, which is why I was excited to team up with them on this one again. This is a 501c3 registered nonprofit, so every donation is fully tax deductible, and it's just a quality organization, right? So I was fortunate to be able to help deliver a couple vehicles in Kyiv a few weeks ago when I was in Ukraine, and they take the time to not just deliver a vehicle, but one that has had all of the work done and is ready to go. We know one of the challenges that the units face in Ukraine is they get a vehicle, but it comes with $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 worth of repairs, and the soldiers need to find a way to finance that. Not super helpful. Not the case with Car for Ukraine. They provide working, reliable vehicles to soldiers at the front. Now, a couple, and we've got the video here. If you go to the page, link in the description and pinned comment, we've got the video up there that I just showed. couple of patches here that I'm really excited about. We don't usually do this. We don't usually have like customized patches that are unique to these fundraisers, or at least I haven't. So the first one here, $120 or more, we've got the Seraphim patch. So this is the Angel of Justice. This is the specific drone unit that we're going to support. Pretty unique one there. Moving up, $295 or more, we've got the Seraphim unit patch. So this is like the one the soldiers will actually wear. And then $590 or more receives kind of a collection of patches from the brigade to the battalion down to the company level. So again, we got some interviews lined up with these guys. I'm really excited to see how this comes together over the course of the year. For those interested and able, the link to contribute will be in the description below. Now, continuing on, stepping back a little bit, we have seen a continuation of Russian strikes specifically targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure in recent days. In fact, Russian mill blogger 2 Majors said, quote, "A massive strike on the Ukrainian energy sector put an end to the short ceasefire organized at Trump's request." Now, President Trump actually spoke about this yesterday. I'm going to play that clip real quick.
And I asked him if he wouldn't shoot for a period of 1 week, no missiles going into Kiev or any other towns, and he's agreed to do it. So it's something.
And I kind of am mixed on how to present this, to say the least. Now, as President Trump was saying that, Russian missiles and drones were, or if they had not already started flying towards Ukraine, they were set to begin within the next hour or two. So this didn't exist, I guess is the way to put it. Like, there was not an energy ceasefire in place. Trump said there was, said he asked Putin, said that Putin agreed to it. Publicly, Russia never said anything about it. Now, there were, I think, 3 or 4 days maybe that Ukraine went without strikes against their energy infrastructure. There were still strikes being carried out all across Ukraine, but I don't know that, look, Russia was not going to adhere to this in the first place, all right? So Russia never openly committed to this energy ceasefire. Now it's off the table. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force said that overnight 521 separate munitions were used in this attack, including 71 missiles and 450 strike drones. That is a significant attack and probably the result of Russia storing up their munitions over the course of the last week or so. The Ukrainian Air Force says the main targets were Kyiv, Kharkiv, Dnipro, and the Odessa regions. According to preliminary data, they were able to intercept 450 targets. That includes 38 missiles and 412 drones. They are tracking the impact of 27 missiles and 31 drones on 27 locations, as well as the fall of downed drone debris in 17 locations, and they're still working to clarify the result of 6 of the remaining Russian missiles. Now, the Russian assessment of this strike, coming from their channels, they say at night there was the most massive strike on Ukraine so far this year. The main target was energy infrastructure. There are serious consequences. Again, I want to point out, they're not pretending that this has to do with the Russian military. It is the energy infrastructure. And Russian channel after Russian channel after Russian channel talks about how the point here is knocking out the energy infrastructure to freeze the population and make them give in and make them agree to negotiating terms that they otherwise would not agree to. So the Russian assessment here, talking about the targets in Kyiv, we've got the Tripol thermal power plant and the Rivne nuclear power plant. In Kharkiv, hours-long strikes on the city's energy infrastructure. They say that more than 820 residential homes will be cut off from electric and water. In Vinnytsia, they targeted a thermal power station. In Dnipro, another thermal power station. And they note explosions heard in Zaporizhia, Pavlograd, Odessa, Chernihiv, Sumy, and elsewhere. The assessment here from Russian mill blogger Military Informant, he says the end of the energy truce was officially confirmed by the Ukrainian Ministry of Energy, stating that Russia has resumed attacks on the energy sector. They did not decide to extend the favorable atmosphere of the negotiations following their postponement, and the past few days without attacks should not have a serious impact on the restoration of the enemy's energy system. It is below zero right now in Ukraine. Like, not consistently, but I want to say every day this coming week is going to reach into below 0 Fahrenheit. It's absolutely frigid, without any issues with the electrical infrastructure. That would be challenging for a city. It has the chance of being a major problem for Ukraine here in the short term. Ukrainian President Zelensky said the aftermath of the Russian attack in our regions is still being dealt with. Once again, the targets were energy facilities. As of now, it is known that 9 people were injured in the attack. There are damages to ordinary residential buildings and energy infrastructure. In Kyiv, there were fires in multi-story buildings after drone strikes, and a kindergarten was damaged. For Russia, using the coldest days of winter to terrorize people is more important than using diplomacy. Without pressure on Russia, this war will not end. Now Moscow is choosing terror and escalation, and for this reason, maximum pressure is needed. Now, if this was a year ago, I would have said, look at this clear-cut, Trump thinks that he's gotten Russia to agree to something, and they don't agree to it publicly. They just kind of ignore it publicly, and then pretty clearly regardless of your view on this, I think it's pretty obvious that yesterday Trump thought that Kyiv would not be hit, and that night Kyiv was hit. Earlier in the administration, I would have said maybe this will be a breaking point and Trump will agree that he can't trust Putin and we'll see some sanctions or something like that. But unfortunately, at this point, the last few days have just kind of played out how I think most people expected them to. The 2, 3, 4 day break from Russian strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure was nice. I don't know that anybody really expected that to go on any longer at all. And any agreements that have been made or even closely agreed to in the ceasefire department over the course of the last year, Russia has never agreed to in the first place. So that trend is continuing. It'd be nice to see some pressure from the United States and our European allies that Putin has no intention of honoring these ceasefires, but I think that's probably, unfortunately, asking for a little bit too much at this point. It's not the most optimistic take, I get it, but I just feel like we've been here multiple times before and probably shouldn't have expected anything different. But that's all we got for now. Again, for those interested and able, the link to the ongoing campaign to provide the Seraphims, a whole fleet of trucks inside the 104th Territorial Defense Brigade, will be in the description and pinned comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.